Well,
hey!
Hello there, friends, lovers, and thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, and you, and we are glad you are here. Today is Sunday, September 29th. That's it for September. It's almost over. It's practically over.
All gone.
What the heck happened? Glad you are here. Glad you are joining us. It's time to scale the mountain, climb the mountain. Why would we climb the mountain? The same reason we would do everything else. And that's what I want to talk about today. So let me grab my voluminous show notes here. Because today is September 29th. There we go. The 273rd day of the year. I've got pages and pages today, so I was a little mixed up there. 273rd. Man, we are so far into the year.
Well, thankfully, we have 800 days in a year. Is that right?
Well, metaphorically speaking, you know, you can say metaphorically speaking about anything and make it true. So I'm all about that.
How about 1,000 days in a year?
I'm good with that. Somebody was saying, well, no, what we need is 13 months in a year, and that way they could all be 28 days long. And, you know, because it would perfectly match the orbit of the moon around the Earth. It turns out that's not even true. People always want a way to shoehorn things into a nicer, easier way of thinking about it.
I'm for 13 months because 13 is...
lucky number for Halloween.
The baker's dozen.
Baker's dozen. That little bit extra, which is what we go for here. 273rd day of the year. Okay, big number. Doesn't even, like, I can't even anymore. But that means 93 days left. Yes, less than 100 days left in the year to make sure that 2024 is your best year yet. We talked about best year yet, but we're gonna big whipped cream cherry on top it today. Christmas in 87 days. I told you last time, it's already the holiday season. Thanksgiving is in 60 days. Like 60, that's like 2 months. Buy your turkey early if you're buying it frozen, or better yet, go for a fresh turkey this year. Halloween is in 32 days.
Starts the day after tomorrow.
It's basically a month. Well, for Amy, it's a month of Halloween. You basically got a month to get ready for Halloween.
You've got pre-Halloween in August.
Yes, and a lot to cover on this date. So I'm going to do them super el quico, like really, really fast. I'm just saying hi to the people in the chat. Jim, Rob, and Paul, glad to see that you are joining us. Folks, if you are listening on the Facebook side of things, it's taken me a minute to bring that one up, but we'll get that up too. I swear, one of these days I will crack the code of how to get Facebook to show me my own Facebook Live events, other than eventually going to my feed and then they show up. Oh, there it is. Sure enough. So, real quick, on this date, and see if you can tell in advance of the on this date gems, the nuggets, the gold that I'm going to give you with takeaways. What are the common themes? How are we going to tie this all together? This is the birth date of Miguel de Cervantes. You all know Cervantes as the author of Don Quixote. In fact, I've got a link to that. Well, Don Quixote, written a zillion years ago, so of course you can read that at Project Gutenberg. You can listen to the audio version at LibriVox, or do like we do and subscribe to Audible on Amazon. You deserve to have the best version of audiobooks in your ears. But I've got a secret. I've got something to admit.
The secret.
The secret. I've never actually read Don Quixote.
I haven't either, actually.
Folks, if you have read Don Quixote, tell us in the chat. Is it a book we need to read, or is it just, we've heard enough of these stories out there that, there I am. Okay, sorry, it's a real mystery. And on Facebook, we've got, Jim is there because he's two people in one. Facebook, YouTube, too cool. But also Frank Grail is there and says, I watched Rozzy today, Yarin today, some Pat Metheny videos. Watch for my Facebook posts. Mine are the best. Frank, I admire your panache, and we'll talk about panache. I admire your willingness to say, damn it, my own stuff is the best stuff. It should be, because whatever you produce, and now I'm talking to all of you out there, You produced it. That means it's your standards. It's your idea of what is good. Your stuff should be the best out there. That's part of the theme, because it is Cervantes' birthday today. Birth date today, 1547. He's assumed room temperature a long time ago, but wrote Don Quixote. My biggest reference for Don Quixote is actually from Cyrano de Bergerac, which, of course, Cervantes didn't write. Rostand wrote that. The one book that I've read, I might have actually read more times than Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead. Hard to say. Of course, the Brian Hooker translation, the best translation of Cyrano de Bergerac. The 1950 movie keeps the spirit. Okay, it heavily edited. Even the plot has some significant changes to make it fit in an hour-and-a-half movie. But I'll come back to the scene where the arch-villain is confronting Cyrano de Bergerac in Ragueneau's bakery, in the pastry shop. And he says, "Have you read Don Quixote?" And of course Cyrano answers back, "I have, and found myself the hero." "It'll be so good to read once more the chapter of the windmills." And Cyrano answers him, "Chapter 13. He knows it inside out. And De Guiche says, "Windmills, remember, if you fight with them, may swing around their huge arms and cast you down into the mire."
The mire.
To which Cyrano responds, "Or up among the stars." So when I think of Cervantes, happy birthday, Miguel Cervantes, I have to think, of not so much Don Quixote as Cyrano de Bergerac. There is a link in the show notes, the description on YouTube, same on Facebook, to that 1950 production. Since it's now out of copyright, you can watch that film. And it's a beautiful version on YouTube, very high resolution, looks great. You can watch it online for the cost of your soul, because watching this film will make your soul a bigger, more beautiful thing. That's the first of On This Date. Next up, on this date, happy birthday, another happy birthday, besides Cervantes, von Mises. It is Ludwig, Heinrich, Edler, von Mises' birthday today, born in 1881. Okay, so way back in the 19th century, right? Well, he was actually around until 1973. He was around until the 70s. 1973 is when he passed away at the age of 92. Born in Lemberg, Kingdom of Galicia, and Lodzmeria, Austria-Hungary. In other words, a place that doesn't even exist any longer. The great economist, Ludwig von Mises. A little more von Mises could have saved us from something else that happened on this date, September 29th, 2008. Some of you will know right away when I say September 29th, 2008, what happened on that date? And the answer is, that's when the stock market crashed. Crashed in some ways bigger than it ever had before. Of course, the Great Depression was a bigger stock market crash, but for one-day losses, 777 points in one day, the stock market crash of 2008 set new records. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by 777.68 points in intraday trading. Until the stock market crash in March 2020, you guys remember that one? At the start of COVID. It was the largest point drop in history. Now the COVID one, boom, great recovery on that one. Very surprising, because the market just tumbled. It was crazy, and what did it go down to? 17,000 on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. But the crash in 2008 didn't even have COVID as an excuse. And the amazing thing to me, we're talking about the market going from 14,000 to 6,500, is that this week, record highs, 42,000. Now, wait a minute. It's 2024. How could the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the NASDAQ is doing well too, how could the DJIA be hitting record highs, and yet all we hear in this election year 2024, well, the economy's horrible. People show you photographs of gas prices, which incidentally haven't changed much in the last few years. We're still paying a little over $3 a gallon here in Motown. Folks in California right now are saying, "You don't know what you're talking about." You're right. I don't know what I'm talking about in California, but in normal places, I know folks over in Europe and the UK are saying, you Americans don't realize how good you've got it. No, trust me, we know how good we've got it. My point is, inflation is a nightmare, but the economy as an aggregate is doing surprisingly well, and not just in the stock market. It's certainly not 2008, when, again, 777 points in one day. So where are we at here? On this date, Miguel Cervantes, also Cyrano de Bergerac and Don Quixote, Ludwig von Mises's birth date, stock market crash, Stacy Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, who's Stacy Allison? Stacy Allison of Portland, Oregon, in 1988 became the first American woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest. I've told you people before. That expression, you people, isn't that rude? Is that like the worst thing to say? You people! I don't know about you people. No, I've told you all before that as you concern yourself with the collapse of Western civilization, and believe me, I am totally with you on that. The collapse is what? Here, I've got a copy of Ayn Rand's book, Anthem. I am all about the collapse of Western civilization. But as you concern yourself with the collapse of Western civilization, what's really weird is people, well, you know, normal people, Stacy Allison, goes out and climbs the tallest mountain in the world. Well, she wasn't the first person. The first person, of course, was Sir Edmund Hillary, who Hillary Clinton was named after. There was such a scandal about that when she was running for president, and people are like, what are you talking about? Edmund Hillary, and he wasn't alone, incidentally, the first successful climbing of Mount Everest. People should say Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary. That partnership reached the top of Mount Everest, and apparently that happened 2 years after Hillary Clinton was born, which means her own story is not just apocryphal, but inaccurate. She couldn't have been named after Edmund Hillary because Edmund Hillary hadn't climbed. He wasn't famous. He wasn't the kind of person you would name somebody after until 2 years after she was born. So take that, you Democrats out there. You know, people love their gotchas. On this date, 1988, Stacy Allison, Portland, Oregon, becomes the first American woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest. Thousands of people have actually done that since the first scaling by Norgay and Hillary. I should say Norgay and Edmund Hillary. When you say Norgay and Hillary, it sounds like we're saying Hillary Clinton climbed Mount Everest. Let's see. As of May 2024, 340 people have died on Everest. Over 200 bodies remain on the mountain and have not been removed due to the dangerous conditions. You just can't clean up, you know, a mountain that's 29,000 feet tall. Excuse me.
You know who also climbed Mount Everest? Well, actually, he didn't quite do it. Was Gary Johnson.
Yes, he did climb Mount Everest. Yeah. He didn't reach the top.
Yeah.
But Gary Johnson.
You know, we were reminiscing about Gary Johnson, who we supported, was it about 8 years ago now?
Yes, had him in town. Had him in the living room with our friends doing a fundraiser.
Yep.
Hung out with him.
Yeah, we really miss him. I miss him.
Okay, what's the common denominator? Oh, it's also National Coffee Day, although I don't really have a tie-in for that one. But the common denominator of all of these stories, your take-home, the juice, the good stuff, has to do with this. There you go. If you're listening to the podcast, the audio version, there is on the screen now a windmill. This windmill is actually the windmill at Greenfield Village. Took this photograph today. And this is the windmill just outside of the Daggett farm property. And the Daggett house, which you have to go to. If you ever go down Maple Lane at Greenfield Village and you're like, it's kind of long, I don't know if I'm going to go all the way to the end. No, you got to go all the way to the end. You've got to go to Daggett. But right next to Daggett is this windmill. Again, from the film version, I don't have the version from the translation, the Hooker translation. It may be direct because the film was very faithful. Used a lot of Hooker's lines, which is a good thing. I still think of when they did the movies of Atlas Shrugged. And as bad as the movies of Atlas Shrugged were, the one thing that sticks out, the worst thing about them to me...
Was the stock footage?
There were 10 worse things about it. The stock footage, you're right. The stock footage was terrible. Just, let's go to publicdomainclipart.com and make half of Atlas Shrugged. The fact that they couldn't actually afford to secure the cast for the 3 parts of the movie.
Yeah.
So every time you would go to the next part of the movie, all of the actors and actresses changed. But no, to me, the very, again, crimes of the movie version of Atlas Shrugged.
They were some way related, as they were all Homo sapiens.
They were all human beings. I don't even know about that. I'm not even going to give them that much credit. But the worst part of it was the dialogue, the script. They didn't just modernize the setting. They modernized the language. But there's a lot of language in Atlas Shrugged, a lot of brilliant dialogue that you don't need to update. It just didn't need it. There was no reason. It's not like Ayn Rand was writing in the 1700s and there are words nobody would understand or ways in which people spoke that nobody would speak anymore. No, her dialogue holds up. Crack open a copy of Atlas Shrugged, read any of the dialogue. It's not only that it holds up, it's brilliant. It is brilliant dialogue, and sometimes it is downright hilarious. The humor is incisive and cutting and smart. Maybe they just thought it was too smart for people to understand anymore. Not smart as in highfalutin language, just people speaking really well. My point is, if you watch the 1950 version of Cyrano de Bergerac, even though they did have to change the story a bit, they did use the Brian Hooker translation for most of the dialogue. And it's so freaking good. So, the windmill goes with the reference to the chapter on windmills, chapter 13 of Don Quixote, in Cyrano de Bergerac.
Yep. And by the way, that windmill is a couple things. That windmill, as far as we understand, is the oldest standing windmill in North America, if not the Americas. Not in Europe. I believe there are older windmills there. And it was also given to Henry Ford for his birthday, one of his birthdays, from the Detroit Dealership Association, the Detroit area Ford Dealership Association. So there's some little facts for you. Pretty cool.
Yes.
You know who else's birthday today is?
Who else's birthday is it today?
James Valiant, the author of Creating Christ and The Passion of Ayn Rand's Critics.
James Valiant. Some of you folks will have heard of this writer. Hopefully Jimmy is listening tonight. Yes, what a birthday to celebrate. I don't know what year it is. I think he's my age.
So he's 29.
So he's 29. Well, that would mean he's 30 now. Because my birthday is a couple weeks after his. Forever young, if you know anything about James Valiant. Jimmy Valiant, you know. Forever young. Yes, we absolutely need to celebrate that. And we can tie him into all of this too. Absolutely.
How so? Tell me.
Well,
on the spot.
I haven't given the tie-in yet.
Oh, you haven't yet?
No.
I'm okay. Drum roll, please.
I have not tied it all together yet. No. We're only, a few minutes into the 5 minutes here. So, the other on this date, National Coffee Day. And, yeah, last night we watched the film Hook. If you're a Peter Pan fan, what do you mean Peter Pan? If you're a Peter Pan, even if you're a casual Peter Pan fan, I've never actually read Peter Pan. I only know it from, Disney movies and cartoons and comics and those kinds of things. But if you have any appreciation for the story at all, you absolutely must see the 1991 film Hook. And I can use that to tie everything together. One of the reasons why I was interested in seeing the film Hook, not only has it a stellar cast, Robin Williams does a fantastic job in an extraordinarily difficult role if you knew the movie. You have Dustin Hoffman, of all people, playing Captain Hook. This is not animated, this is real life. He's brilliant. He just does a fantastic job with this role. Julia Roberts is charming, as always. But this week, we lost Maggie Smith. Mm-hmm. Maggie Smith plays Wendy in the film Hook. Given her age, you can imagine the film takes place a little bit later than the original stories.
Yes, Wendy is an older woman.
Yes. Love that film. This is one of those films where, sometimes you watch a movie and there's like a part of the movie that gets you really choked up or like teary-eyed. The whole freaking movie is like that for me. It's just wonderful in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it too.
Amy even enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm usually a little bit more hard-edged with things, so, being a punk rocker, Spielberg is okay. But no, this was actually quite a endearing movie. I'll say it was endearing. And there was also a real whimsy about it that Robin Williams brought to the acting and to the whole atmosphere of the movie. So it was really good to see Robin Williams and just to kind of remind myself of how brilliant he was. Maggie Smith was the cherry on the cake, of course, and everybody else was really good in the movie too. So it was good.
Yes. And because James Valiant is getting older, no, I'm kidding, because I'm getting older, because we're all getting older. You might be young, but you're getting older. It turns out, as you get on in years, it's valuable to have some heroes and just people you like who are younger than you, because it gets a little frustrating that it seems like every week or at least every month somebody really, really important passes away. And as I've gotten a little bit older, even though I'm young at heart too, I've learned you've got to change your perspective on this stuff. If you've seen the film Amelie, one of the most tragic scenes, and it's just a little snippet, but it's about a guy who, is seeing all of his friends passing away. And he's got a little book where he, crosses off the name of the next friend of his who's passed away. And, I've learned that when people pay, and this has always been a good idea, but especially important, again, if you're over 40, 50, 60, you got to start being able to say, man, I'm so sad they're gone, but that was a life well lived. That was a life worth living. If I could have a life that, a fraction of that kind of life, man, I'm so glad that Maggie Smith did the things she did, had the life that she had, was celebrated the way that she was celebrated. Dame Maggie Smith, royalty. She would have been royalty even without the Queen saying so. What you see with somebody like Maggie Smith and somebody like Robin Williams, who, tragically died by suicide, reached a point where, for reasons, he just decided he wasn't going to go on living.
Well, for health reasons, he...
you never know. You don't know what somebody's under. I don't even necessarily, I don't think when people have a suicide that it's necessarily, irrational or tragic, or it may just be, and it's always, of course, enormously sad. But, consider Anthony Bourdain. God, what a life. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who lived in any 1 year more than a lot of people do in their entire lives. But you could tell there was a real element of tragedy about him, and eventually it led him to shorten his life when you wish he had lived longer. But I'm getting to the point where, I celebrate people when they pass away. I've heard, and I know absolutely nothing about it, that the Jewish people are better at this than the rest of us. Having funerals that are more celebrations than mourning. And mourning is part of it too. But, they know how to celebrate a life. And I think that's important. I think that's crucial. So why do people climb mountains?
Well, why? So, have you given us a tie-in yet?
This is the tie-in.
Okay.
I had a note on it. Now I forget the guy's name. Early 1900s mountain climber. Nope, sorry, forgot his name. Somebody look it up and tell me in the chat. Famous line. He was asked, "Why do you climb the mountain?" And the famous answer, which is now the standard answer for why do people climb mountains, is because it's there. Yeah, look up why do people climb mountains? Because it's there, and you will get the answer. Why do people climb mountains? Because it's there. What do you mean because it's there? It's 2024. The most important election of our lives is going on right now.
That's British climber George Mallory.
George Mallory. Thank you for that, Amy.
Yep.
George Mallory was asked, why do you climb the mountain? And he answered, because it's there. Again, it's 2024. There's war in the Middle East. There's war in the Ukraine. And all of that aside, there's the most important presidential election in our lifetimes going on. Isn't it always the most important? No, this is the one, really. Really, this time I mean it. This time, end of the world stuff.
Well.
Why are people... They're still doing it. Over 2,000 people have successfully climbed Mount Everest. They're not stopping. Why do people climb the mountain? Why do you climb the mountain? Oh, you don't climb the mountain. Oh, why do you listen to your favorite song? Why do you watch your favorite movie? I think Robin said he doesn't like to watch movies. He'd rather read the book. Why do you read books? You know, the objectivists, the Ayn Rand fans out there will know her view on art was unique in that she regarded art as an end in itself. She said all the didactic, all the learning that you get from art, all of the other purposes that are in art, all the things that you can discover, that's all secondary. The fundamental purpose of art is to establish or reinforce your sense of life, your metaphysical worldview, not your explicit philosophy, your implicit philosophy. And that is an end in itself. It's not even that you want to establish a sense of life. You simply want to live in a world as you see it, or as you might want to see it. It's an end in itself. What else is an end in itself? Well, art is big. Movie, films, books, dance, musical performance. But what else? Sports. Do you play sports? Maybe you're part of a championship league, you're going for a trophy, but why do you play sports? Because you love it. Because you love it. It's a challenge. There's competition. There's back and forth. There's camaraderie. There's teamwork.
I think there's more than that, though. I mean, specifically, why do you do any of that is because you have personal bests. You have standards that you have achieved thus far, and you want to get better. Okay. And you want, and that's a value to you. That kind of physical and mental achievement regarding sports, or anything physical in that way, or climbing mountains or anything like that.
Yes.
You want to best yourself. You're competing against yourself in that way.
You're right.
Which is absolutely appropriate to do.
It is. But I do want you to consider the counterexample, because there are times in sports where you've topped out. At my age, I've probably run my best 5K ever. Maybe not. Maybe if I really train, I could do a 5K, better than I could have at 30, 35. But there are certain things I will never do as well. So it's not, in those cases, sometimes it is, but in those cases, it's not about a personal best, because I've already done my personal best. If I ever get to the point where I have arthritis in my hands, say, and I won't be able to play the guitar as well as I do now, or I won't be able to play piano as well as I do now, will I still do it even though it's no longer a matter of improving myself? Yes, I will. Well, some people will say you shouldn't.
Your standards then alter, and you say, okay, well, if I can do 2/3 of what I used to do at my age, that's really good. That is an achievement.
Yes.
You have to be objective about yourself and the fact that you're growing older, and you can't do as much.
You're right. You still have standards. You still have the drive. You still have the desire to achieve, to do something good. But some of these activities, maybe all of these activities, have that quality of being an end in themselves. I'm never going to be the world's greatest guitarist. I mean, I've seen the world's greatest guitarists. It's not an expression of modesty to say, yeah, I'm not at that level. You know, just like I'll never be the world's greatest artist. You know, my calligraphy is pretty good, and I like doing sketches, but I'll never be the world's greatest graphic artist. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Doesn't matter. There are some things which you are well served at in wanting to be the absolute world's greatest. But not most things. Most of these activities, especially in art, and I think in sports, and I think by extension, almost everything is an end in itself. And that's not the way we usually think about this stuff. In philosophy, we can go back to Aristotle or any of the great philosophers, we talk about ends values versus means values. And that's a great distinction. There are things we do because of what comes next. We learn a skill so that we can get a better job. We get a better job so we can be more financially secure. We want to be more financially secure so we can surround ourselves by the values we enjoy and share that with our families and our friends and our loved ones, our kindred spirits. Somewhere at the end of that chain are ends values. And the answer to the question, why do it, is because I love it. Because I'm alive, and this is why I'm alive. Because this is what makes every day a good thing.
Yeah, so we've got some people in the chat on Facebook, especially right now. Christian says, to me, via Jean Maroney, happiness is a state of vitality, and pondering your positive values isn't something you do 24/7, because you have other things going on, and that type of contemplative behavior isn't practical when doing tasks and stuff.
Right. No, it's a great point. You don't constantly focus on. Actually, I know people who do this, and I don't know if I'd call it contemplative or just complaining, but I know people I've worked with who say, well, I'm doing this because I want to feed my family. I'm doing this because... Yeah, but even, you're right, the higher version, contemplative behavior, just contemplating, well, I don't really love this, but it's what serves my values, so I do love it. You don't spend all day thinking about it. It becomes a distraction. No, you do the task and you focus on the task. But I'll tell you, as an IT technician, it was when things were at their worst that I was most likely to really dig in. And my motivation for really digging in was, I don't love this moment, but God, I love this job. God, I love being an IT technician. I love being able to save the day or put this together or deploy this new equipment. I like being the guy who can make this happen. Not because I'm better than the next guy, but just I like making things happen. I usually was better than the other guy, but not the point. Yeah, so it's a great, and incidentally, Jean Maroney, if any of you are not already accessing her resources, go to thinkingdirections.com and at least sign up for her free newsletter, which will give you 25% of what she's got to offer right there. Just outstanding insights in both managing your own thinking and your own productivity. So thank you for that, Christian.
Yep. He also says, Christian also put in, art can be a fuel for that state of vitality, though. If you are taking the time to ponder its sense of life and themes and messages, you could say that a sense of life is a lot like a state of vitality like that. Yeah, I can see that. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down there.
Yeah. And let me just throw in, because we've talked about it in the past, that's one more good reason to curate your inputs. Be a little bit careful about what you consume. If you're spending all your time watching horror movies because it makes you feel better than what's going on in the real world out there, maybe change the mix a bit.
Yeah, I want to mention something I thought of recently about Atlas Shrugged, and I want to reread it. Sometimes the last I think the second to the last time I read Atlas Shrugged, and I usually do it every maybe 2 years at this point, but I've a couple dozen times I've read the book, if not on Audible, I should say, not always with a book, but just reading it for the villains, it's really fascinating. Ayn Rand wrote her villains in such a fascinating way, also very humorously, of course, humorously in a cathartic sense in a lot of ways. But I remember, in terms of this year, however, Rome is burning. We're going to hell in a handbasket. However, the year that it gets so bad that the federal government makes a new federal rule for a morale conditioner who will go around the country telling us that deprivations build strength and character, and therefore we should appreciate them. When that happens, okay, maybe the world's falling apart at that point. But until that point, I'm still optimistic, still have hope.
Oh my gosh, I have found so many reasons for optimism this week that I started getting really impatient with the pessimists out there. It's amazing to me how good things are and how little people see it. But that's a topic for another time. Thank you. What else have we got going on in the chat here? Because I see a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so we've got, Christian asks, greatest guitarist by what standard, though?
Greatest guitarist by what standard?
And then Jim says, you're a great musician, and you can become an even greater one, but you will never, ever become a great burlesque artist. Jim
has been disappointed ever since episode 69, which I thought was fun, but he thought was going to be even spicier than it was. I have on a casual shirt here. Sorry about that, Jim. I continue to disappoint you, but you just wait. One of these days, we'll do another drunken philosophy show, another drunken podcasting episode, and God only knows what is going to happen, and he ain't telling. So, time will tell. As far as the greatest guitarist, I'm glad you mentioned that because it comes up a lot, probably because I'm subscribed to a lot of music-related groups. People will post their list of the greatest guitarists ever. Good luck with that. Somebody shared on my wall recently, who was it? Roy Clark shows up on The Odd Couple with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall and does a little guitar playing. And people are putting greatest guitarist ever. Somebody put in their comment, Jimi Hendrix was once asked, how does it feel to be the greatest guitarist in the world? And Jimi Hendrix answered, well, I don't know, you should ask Roy Clark. There's all these memes and all these jokes. I have no idea who the greatest guitarist in the world is, and I don't even think it's a meaningful question. Because you're right, by what standard? Hell, just by what genre are we talking about? Acoustic guitar, classical guitar, electric guitar, rock and roll, jazz. I'm a rock and roll musician, so I admire all the rock and roll guitarists. But I got to acknowledge, when I watch a really good jazz musician, okay, most rock and roll guys can't do that. They can't read. Sheet music. They can't read sheet music. They couldn't tell you what a 13th with a diminished fifth looks like. And even the ones who can, they're, at some point you just watch guitarists and you're like, you can't compare. Is Steve Vai a better guitarist than Eddie Van Halen was in rock and roll? Yes, but no. Eddie Van Halen, they're just, you can't compare. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into it. The answer to your question is, I have no idea, and neither do you. But feel free to make your case and love the guitarists that you love. Admire the ones that you admire. Get the juice from them. Get the inspiration from them. If you're a guitar player, get the chops from them.
So also Jim put in his 2 cents about Don Quixote. He said,
I think I put in about $2 there. It looks like one of his essays.
Yeah, so Insanity and Impossible Dreams is his essay about Don Quixote. Well, that doesn't sound like you recommend it. The book has a pivotal place in the history of literature and an influence on Western civilization for about 400 years. It is worth reading for just that reason and because it is very entertaining. In Don Quixote's amusing adventures or misadventures, the reader witnesses what happens when someone who is consistently irrational goes on a quest to defeat the evil in the world. However, I consider it an evil book. I agree with Ayn Rand's criticisms of it, and which you can find in Ayn Rand Answers. Oh, you can find... I didn't realize that she covered that in Ayn Rand Answers. I read that book, but I don't remember that part. The most significant message that book sends is that if you have high values and you pursue them, you're crazy. Well, that's not very encouraging to the children of the world who want to become doctors and astronauts.
You know, I've run into the kind of idealism that is, well, Platonic. Plato's idea of idealism, which means transcends any connection to reality and makes the earth seem like something substandard. And if Cervantes ran into enough of that, like everywhere, and that was all he was surrounded by, I could see him writing a book that says, well, then the only people who will chase ideals will be some crazy Platonist.
Yeah.
But not having read the book, that's the most I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, you know, it sounds like also Christian says that he did like the book. He did like Don Quixote. It was pretty interesting, but I don't like people who are setting up Don Quixote to laugh at him and basically mentally abuse him for laughs. Well, yeah, that does not sound like a pleasant world to live in, where the hero of the book or the protagonist of the book is constantly laughed at and put down, and you know, he goes in, I assume he goes into all these misadventures trying to fight evil, and he just looks like a big clown. Like it's all just a laugh, like there really are no values, like there really, you know, why bother anyway, because we're just a bunch of, you know, dust in the wind or mud in the mire or whatever it is. Yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like perhaps a comedy, but sounds like more like Dumb and Dumber than anything.
No doubt, there's a lot, and we talked about metaphors earlier. Everything in Don Quixote is a metaphor for something else. At some point, I should read. I didn't notice that Jennifer was here. Jennifer Leinberger is here.
Yes, she is.
I usually don't give first and last names for privacy reasons, but Jennifer is known as the world's greatest Rush fan. So since we talked about epic guitarists,
she is.
You know, if you have any question that Alex Lifeson is and was on anybody's proper list of the world's greatest guitarists, you know, just listen to anything. Listen to the intro to La Via Strangliato. Listen to anything that Alex Lifeson did. Acoustic, electric, inventive, brilliant, and able to make it look easy. There's some of the world's greatest concert videos, including Clockwork Angels, which still boggles my mind. When that one came on, I thought, I didn't even know you could do that. You know, screens and displays and synchronization and the motion of... Anyway. So, hi, Jennifer. How are you doing?
Hey. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so...
so I'm catching up on both YouTube and Facebook here.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that Robert and I did today was, just because we could do it, because it was there... it was the last full day of the full experience of Greenfield Village at the Henry Ford. And
yes, we were at the village.
That included all the rides functioning, the train going, and you know, so basically the daytime hours closed down in October, and they come back just for the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in November. So we had to go today, even though it was raining and dreary and everything. But honestly, I had the best time. I always do. Every time I go to Greenfield Village, I find people. I found a friend of mine. We've never actually sat down and talked politics or kind of semi-philosophical ideas before. And we were standing in a barn full of sheep and chickens and all the hay, and it was all kind of smelly, but still our conversation was absolutely amazing, and I really appreciated that. Yeah, so I find a lot of like minds in Greenfield Village, and a lot of great people, a lot of people who really care, and just the experiences there are just profoundly wonderful. So yeah, that we definitely curated our day to include something that was artful and inspiring, and something that we did. It was kind of an achievement too, because yesterday was my flamenco dance, my big flamenco dance.
Big performance.
Big performance, and it was on a nice full stage. And the stage was beautiful. It was made of wood, so when you were stomping on it, it made wonderful sounds. And we had a good audience of like 200 and so people. So it was just a great time, but it was physically challenging today to to walk around after yesterday and a full week of constant flamenco practice, which you might not know, but it's really difficult to do. So.
Yes. Yep. More in the chat here. Stephen Katz says hi, and hello to you, Stephen. Folks, if you aren't friends with Stephen Katz on Facebook, he's been posting interesting adventures in law, in legal work.
And other things in life, too, actually.
And, yeah, Stephen's a good person to follow on Facebook, or friend. Paul says, Jack Klugman, if you mean the actor, was great in some Twilight Zone episodes. I do mean the actor. I haven't seen all of those Twilight Zones. I haven't seen all of the Odd Couple episodes either, but I do remember enjoying them when I was a wee thing. So, because it's there, why do we climb the mountain? Because it's there. Why do we follow our values? Why do we live our lives? Well, we did an episode called The End, in which we talked about life as an end in itself. And I thought of that this week when I was listening to Elizabeth Gilbert on the Tim Ferriss Show. Some of you will know who Elizabeth Gilbert is. This is Mrs. or Miss Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah, she's been around a long time.
Yeah, the gal who wrote the book that inspired the movie. I mentioned that Julia Roberts played Tinkerbell in Hook. Well, she also starred in Eat, Pray, Love. The book comes from Elizabeth Gilbert. She has a different philosophy of life than most of us. And her works are places that you can harvest wisdom, but not necessarily explicit philosophy. Some of it's pretty woo. But I got some value out of very early in the episode. A link to it is in the show notes here. Or you can just look up Tim Ferriss's podcast. Or you're probably already subscribed to it. It's often awfully good. But Gilbert mentions... Tim Ferriss asks her, no cherished outcomes. What's that all about? And it's a phrase that Elizabeth Gilbert uses. She says she got it from the Celtic prayer of approach. Now, prayer in this context, we're not talking about praying to a higher being, although that too, but the Celtic prayer of approach is when you approach somebody for an interaction. And here is the Celtic prayer of approach. See what you think of this. Yeah, you're showing up at somebody's house for dinner, or you're just meeting somebody, or you're starting a project together. I honor your gods. I drink at your well. I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. I have no cherished outcomes. I will not negotiate by withholding, and I am not subject to disappointment. The Celtic prayer of approach. To me, it sounds a lot like a really fruity, frou-frou way of expressing Jocko Willink's idea of extreme ownership. I honor your gods. What do you mean? You're going to honor somebody else's values? What's important to them? What about what's important to you? Well, I will always take care of what's important to me. And I am so strong in regard to what's important to me. I am so grounded. I am so well established that I can come to you and honor what you care about. Because what I care about is not at risk. It's bulletproof. I drink at your well. Well, talk about the expression not just of gratitude, but of values. I come into your home or I go to your business. I drink of your well. I get from you what you've got to offer. I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. I love this idea of an undefended heart. I have an undefended heart. I welcome people to try to stab me in the heart. Well, metaphorically, as we say. Bring it on. Whatever you've got. If it's an honest criticism or judgment, I may learn something from it. Or I may help you understand me better. If it's a dishonest attack, well, I can shrug that off. I don't have to fight you. It's the difference between Howard Rourke and Cyrano de Bergerac. Cyrano de Bergerac will not allow an unwashed insult. You know, it's bile in his soul. And I get that, and sometimes you got to fight. Sometimes you got to stand up for your good name. But I'm more like Howard Rourke. I just don't care about the people who attack me. And maybe it's because there aren't that many of them, although I've been getting some of that lately because of the whole politics thing. I have no cherished outcomes. I love the example Tony Robbins gives. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody and you're going back and forth, and at some point you realize you don't even remember what started it, what the argument's about, but you know you've got to win? I have no cherished outcomes. In other words, I'm willing to follow this wherever it goes. The facts before my presuppositions. Even before my values, if I find out my values could use some massaging. I will not negotiate by withholding. You know, I'm not going to come into a relationship closed or bitter or even cautious. Bring it on. You can't hurt me. I'm solid enough in myself. And this last one here, this is a real challenge to me. I am not subject to disappointment. We'll do a whole other show about that. The ability to take whatever happens to you, even if it's not what you wanted, even if in a sense it is a crushing disappointment, to be able to say, okay, this is what happened. This is reality. I didn't get what I wanted, or it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to look. But I got what I got.
Yeah, you may have gotten something.
And, you know, there's always next time. There's always another opportunity. Or I may just need to adjust myself to the facts. That goes along with I have no cherished outcomes. It doesn't mean I don't have any cherished values. It doesn't mean that I don't have any standards or principles. It means that wherever reality takes me, that's where I'm going to go. Love this. Love this. Even though it's pretty damn woo, the Celtic prayer of approach expressed by Elizabeth Gilbert on Tim Ferriss's latest podcast. Love that.
Yeah, I wrote a couple comments in your post.
Yes.
So this is, you know, upon reading it, I really wasn't entirely sure what the context was. I didn't know what Gilbert had said about it. I don't know anything. Just like, okay, here's this old piece of prose. That, how old is this again? I don't know.
Well, if it's a Celtic prayer, I just assume it's super, super old.
Time of the pagans worshipping the oak trees. So I thought to myself, the worst idea that you might take away from this, what would that be? Is that if you have no values, then you'll have no disappointments. I thought to myself, you know, I'm not entirely sure about I honor your guides, I drink at your well, I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. So when I saw I have no cherished outcomes, I kind of translated that as I have no expectations. Or I have no values. And I wasn't entirely sure. I was kind of feeling out what this actually meant, where it was going. So I thought, I guess the worst thing, you know, and, you know, you will not negotiate by withholding. I thought to myself, you know, what kind of value trading is going on here? You know, is it just that you're going in and you have no values and therefore you're not going to have disappointments? And I thought about it a little bit more, and I figured the best idea that you can take away from this is I will meet others at what they value. So in other words, I will figure out what these new people that I'm meeting what they value, and that might be enough to trade with them. So it's not necessarily going in with tons of expectations. Gosh, if these people are not objectivists, or these people are not, like-minded or whatever, I'm going to make assumptions, and I'm going to have these expectations that they have no value to offer for me, and therefore, I don't know, why am I doing this in the first place? But yeah, this idea of you're going into a situation where you're expressing goodwill, and that you may not necessarily have any idea of what you might expect, or you may actually have some assumptions that are negative at the time, but that you're going to find something to get out of it anyway. Yeah. So that, I think that's kind of where it's very woo. I wasn't entirely enamored of it as much as you were, but
it depends. What you get out of it depends a lot on what you bring to it.
Yeah.
Again, because it's poetic language. To me, the important point is it's not that you have no standards. It's that your standards are bigger than the situation. It's not that you have no values. It's that your values aren't under threat just because other people don't share them. My values are bigger than all that. That's why I use the expression bulletproof. They can't hurt me. In that sense, they can't disappoint me. No, I'm bigger than that. And I'll tell you, old expression, but absolutely true, and I'll say this to each and every one of you out there. You, if you're still alive, and spoiler alert, you are bigger than anything that will ever happen to you. You have been bigger than anything that has ever happened to you. Now, that doesn't mean you go around risking your values and throwing your values away and doing stupid things. But, again, you are bigger than anything that will ever happen to you. I think it goes along with the expression, this too shall pass.
Yeah, Christian, I don't know, Christian, please put in the comments who these quotes are from, but he puts in quotation marks two quotes. Quote, strength is one's ability to exert their will over circumstance to get what one wants out of a situation. I'm feeling Nietzsche vibes on that one. And then the second one is, quote, a pessimist is either always right or pleasantly surprised. I'm not entirely sure who said that, but yeah, I'd have to really think about either of those.
I know that expression. The idea is if you always expect the worst, things will always turn out better than you expected.
Right.
The problem with that is that part where you're always expecting the worst. That is not a recipe for happiness. I prefer Robert Heinlein. Robert Heinlein said, don't ever become a pessimist. A pessimist is correct oftener than an optimist, but an optimist has more fun, and neither can stop the march of events. Now, I don't agree with Heinlein about the pessimist is correct more often. I don't think that's actually true. But the logic, I think, is better than the logic of, well, always expect the worst, and then, things will always turn out better than you expected. A pessimist is, in a position to always be pleasantly surprised, or at least, when he's wrong. The problem with that, again, is the being a pessimist part. And I'll add one thing to that. The problem with pessimism is it's irrational. Pessimism is not rational because most things don't turn out for the worst. Don't you read the news? No, I mean real life. I mean real things in real life. I woke up this morning and I made a cup of coffee. My coffee machine, incidentally, worked beautifully. And the coffee was good. And I did some laundry and my washing machine worked. And I got dressed and my clothes fit. They didn't tear and the buttons weren't popping off. And I could go through a whole day, and, you can throw in work and traffic and, other people, and 100,000 things go right every day, all day. And a few things go wrong. Heck, even most of the things in the news are like that. It's just that when things go right, it's not news. I've got more reasons for you to jump on board with the fact that optimism is realism and pessimism is irrational on my Substack. Go to robertnasir.substack.com. You can read all the reasons to be an optimist there. But I do appreciate the quote because I've thought about this many, many times.
Oh, very good. Yeah, he does. Christian does say that the first quote was from a character from an anime called Baki, and the other one is from a character named Kaoretsu, maybe if I'm saying that right, a Chinese kung fu master. So, all right, well, yeah, I mean, actually, there's a lot of philosophy you can find in. Okay, now I'm forgetting what it's called. It's like a little boy. Tell me in the chat.
Book, TV series,
no,
show,
movie? It's an animated anime, and it is called. It's this little boy who goes through his adventures, and he's the last, something or other.
Starfighter,
Airbender. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Never seen it.
Oh, I actually went through all 3 seasons. I watched
wow.
all of them, and yeah, there's some very interesting philosophy in there.
Cool.
But yeah, you get a lot of that from anime, which is really nice. Airbender, thank you. Yeah, and Christian says, I don't uphold the pessimism quote myself. I just remembered it because you brought it up, pessimism.
Yes, and it is clever. But I would remind people that the vast majority of the things we worry about are never, ever going to happen. Of course, it only takes a few really bad ones to ruin your day. So, again, expect the best, but prepare for the worst.
I think if you guys have been following my journey this year, my theme for myself has been awkward adolescence, to put myself into, not unpleasant, but kind of situations where I feel like I'm kind of standing on shaky ground, and to push myself to pursue my values, despite feeling that way. And I've had a lot of success with it. The downside of it was that I feel like I took on too much. And I spread myself a bit too thin. But honestly, I worked really hard. I gained a lot of things. I had a lot of achievement. Very proud of myself for doing all of it. But there were times when I felt a bit too spread out and too scattered to really feel or have that kind of psychological realization, like make that psychologically real to me that this was something that what I was doing was a good thing for myself. But in retrospect, I know it was. But yeah, so I'm going to keep trying to do that, put myself into uncomfortable situations, and why did I bring that up? Yeah. Well, anyway, that's just something that I'm going to keep doing. I hope to keep at it, and I hope you all try it as well. Oh, yes, but back to that Celtic prayer approach, however, that's something I am actually going to think about. I am going to think about that because...
If you look that up, if you read it, if you listen to the Tim Ferriss episode with it in it, take it as advice for somebody who is already strong.
Yeah.
Somebody who's already bulletproof.
Right. And also not just that, but I kind of like the idea of just kind of reasserting that when you're, say for instance, you're at work and you want to ask somebody for something, you want to tell them that you want to go into a different role, you want to tell them that you like this something, you would love to get into this particular endeavor, this particular project, however, this other department, whatever it may be, and don't assume the worst. Assume that you have shared values with this person. They may think that you're flaky, whatever they may think, but you still share the same values. Hopefully if you're in the same business, you're working at the same company. And so go into it with goodwill, go into it with the assumption that you have commonalities with this person that you want to approach and pitch to whatever you want. And I've done that, actually. I've done that where I'm at right now. And I didn't get what I wanted. But that's okay. I'm going to keep at it, I think, and not let naysayers stop me. I'll just say that I discovered that there were some people who left at their previous jobs that I knew, and they left because of political reasons. And I feel very sad about that, because in any job that I've ever had, I could have left for political reasons. But it's a choice to stick it out and stay with it and be persistent and keep nagging and keep expressing yourself, expressing your values, telling people what you love about the place. And, with regard to just going through everyday motions, it's really important to understand why you value what you're doing. You may not feel like you're valuing what you're doing right now. You're valuing your job right now. Oh, it seems so tedious and monotonous, boring, whatever it may be. But try to zoom out from it and ask yourself, what am I really doing? What kind of work am I doing that's causing what? There's a cause and effect relationship between what I'm doing here and what am I helping here? And sometimes you've got to zoom out and say, you know what, I'm helping a very good cause. I'm helping bring about values to so many people, and the certain kind of values that I really love. And I'm so happy to be helping them experience the world that I'm trying to create here. Zoom out to keep thinking about the vision that you have for what you're doing. That's always going to help. But anyway, that's kind of where I am right now in my thinking in terms of my career. Zoom out. I got to zoom out and remind myself of my mission and what really is it that I'm doing and what I really love about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Incidentally, in the chat, we talked about how, as you get older, people that you admire start passing away more than you're ready for. Jim points out in the chat that Chris Christopherson just passed away. He did yesterday. Very sad. Of course, a great songwriter, great singer, great actor. Just all around good life. If you saw recent photographs of him at 88 years old, he looked really rough, and it's probably rude to say it was probably about time for him to go, but another guy where you can say, what a life, what a great life. Just, again, did everything that he wanted to do and did it well. And you can look up all of the films that he was in and all the songs that he wrote. It's funny that first song always comes to mind for me is Me and Bobby McGee, which most people will think of as a Janis Joplin tune, but written by Chris Christopherson. So yes, a great man, a great life, and sad stuff that he is gone now. So we climb the mountain because it's there, or again, I take that as a metaphor. We climb the mountain because it's an end in itself. We climb the mountain because we want the experience of climbing the mountain. And we may want to get on the list of all the cool people who did it. We may want to prove to our friends or our parents we can do the great thing. There may be other reasons. But we do the things because we want the things, because our lives are an end in itself. So we're running a little long. I'm going to wrap up with 2 quick quotes. First quote, often attributed to Anthony Hopkins. But that's just because of the internet, and the internet does that. No, this was originally written by Nanya Hoffman, somebody you may have never heard of, but she's behind a lot of the great quotes on the internet. And she wrote, note to self. I love the framing of that. Note to self. You'll recognize this, and some people will say, oh no, so this other person said that. Note to self. None of us are getting out of here alive, so please stop treating yourself like an afterthought. Eat the delicious food. Walk in the sunshine. Jump in the ocean. Say the truth that you're carrying in your heart like hidden treasure. Be silly. Be kind. Be weird. There's no time for anything else. Okay, that's another one that's kind of woo, but of course
nice.
I love it.
I like that a lot.
Okay, there's another way you could say that. Let me say it like this. The maintenance of life and the pursuit of happiness are not 2 separate issues. To hold one's own life as one's ultimate value and one's own happiness as one's highest purpose are 2 aspects of the same achievement. Existentially, the activity of pursuing rational goals is the activity of maintaining one's life. Psychologically, its result, reward, and concomitant is an emotional state of happiness. It is by experiencing happiness that one lives one's life in any hour or year or the whole of it. And when one experiences the kind of pure happiness that is an end in itself, the kind that makes you think, this is worth living for. What one is greeting and affirming in emotional terms is the metaphysical fact that life is an end in itself. Ayn Rand, The Objectivist Ethics and the Virtue of Selfishness.
So clear, so concise. I mean, it's like rock. It's like I don't know, crystal formations. It's just so cutting, and just there isn't an unclear part of it. It's nice.
Yes.
I mean, it's not as fluffy and stylistic as say prose or poetry. Of course, she's written that too. But yeah, she's so clear. Oh, the early Ayn Rand.
From the early Ayn Rand, the Viking, Kira's Viking. This is the story of Kira's Viking is in We the Living. There were excerpts that were taken out of the book. The Viking smiled as men smile when they look up at heaven. But he was looking down. His right arm was one straight line with his lowered sword. His left arm, straight as the sword, raised a goblet of wine to the sky. The first rays of a coming sun, still unseen on the earth, struck the crystal goblet. It sparkled like a white torch. Its rays lighted the face of those below. To a life, said the Viking, which is a reason unto itself. So I hope you are able to find more and more of those moments where you say, oh my gosh, this is worth living for. You can find it in music. You can find it in film. You can find it in romance. You can find it in sports. You can find it in exercise. Hopefully you can find it in at least much or most of what you do at work.
Yep.
Hopefully you feel some of that enjoying a podcast that you like. But I hope you find as many moments as possible where it is clear, it is self-evident, it is in your face. Oh my gosh. This is a moment worth living. This is life as an end in itself.
So Christian says, I hope to emulate Rand's power to communicate to lay people the value of philosophy, egoism, and the pursuit of happiness. I'll just say, I hope to be able to communicate to myself these ideas. Because it can be difficult. and expressing it to people, I'll just give my advice, which is start with values. Start with and then start with values, and then start, going a little bit deeper into why people chose those values for themselves, and kind of get into epistemology if you can, and and get, it's always a nice feeling for people. I always count on this, especially, and not necessarily bad people, but good people, which there are plenty around, that I can talk to them about their values, and they can understand what I can maybe help them understand why they hold those values, and the virtues that supply those values, the actions people take to gain what they love in life. And but I would say this: practice on yourself. Practice on why do you like a certain value yourself? What virtues are you practicing to get what you want? I just identify what those are clearly in your mind, in terms of your own action, and that's going to more easily translate to communicating to other people. So, and that's why I love Ayn Rand, by the way, because she was a flesh and blood woman. She was huggable. She was physical. She was real, and she's a human being who came up with these ideas and these formulations that are going to continue to be helpful, insightful, and life-affirming beyond our wildest dreams, into the future. And yes, so yes.
Yeah, I certainly admire the project of wanting to reach people. If you go to my YouTube page, youtube.com/Robert Nasir, you will find a playlist, 108 episodes of the series Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir.
Yes.
About half of those I did solo, half of those with Amy. Why did I create that podcast? I created the podcast that I needed to hear. Hopefully some of you found that valuable, or will find that valuable as well. Folks, thank you for joining us. Running a little long. I think it's been more than 5 minutes, so we will wrap it up here. Is there anything in the chat that I missed that must be spoken of?
I think we're good.
Yeah, Robin asks, if you don't expect things to go well, then why would you attempt them? Yeah, again, pessimism isn't just a position from which, well, everything's better than what I expected. No, it has its own effects. We won't get into that anymore. What we will say is optimism is realism. And you people out there, oh my gosh, the best audience in podcasting, thank you for joining us. We are glad you were here. If you have suggestions for future shows, put them in the chat, or put them in the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. Thank you to those who support the show. Support the show. You mean share it? Yes, share it. Please share the show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. But here I'm talking specifically about our patrons. Thank you to those of you who have gone to patreon.com/Robert Nasir. Well, you'll find the link at robertnasir.com. And who signed up. You patrons help keep us energized, motivated. Keep the show going, keep the show happening, and we appreciate it. When I got sick with the dreaded C word, and we actually took 2 weeks off, it felt like, oh my God, I'm letting people down. They're paying us to do this show. So, of course, it was mandatory to get caught right up, and we have done that, but we are not done yet. Thank you for joining us. We wish you, afraid to wish, Mr. Reardon, says Francisco d'Anconia. Yes, we wish you all of the success that you so richly deserve. I know you deserve it. People who don't deserve it, ne'er-do-wells, troublemakers, don't listen to a show like this.
And I'll just say, I'm just going to reiterate Nancy Hoffman. Nania Hoffman. Say the truth that you're carrying in your heart and mind, like hidden treasure. Say that you're carrying like it's precious, and you don't want it to be hurt. Put it out into the world. It's not going to get hurt. You're not going to get hurt. say the truth that you're carrying in your heart like hidden treasure.
You know, those of you,
That's to me. That's what I'm saying to myself.
those of you out there who are kind of fragile, even if you're not admitting it to yourself, you have my sympathy. You have my sympathy, but if you can, if you have the strength, rip your chest open and show them that heart.
Yes.
Give them what, because you deserve it. You deserve to be in the spotlight. If they're going to talk, let them talk. If they're going to laugh, let them laugh. A few people will get it. Find those kindred spirits. You deserve to have them, to be with them, and to show them what you've got. Every now and then, you got to stand on the table. Thank you for joining us. That's it. That's all I got to say. You got anything else?
That's it.
That's all we got. That's all we got for you. Sorry if we shortchanged you by not going on long enough, but we wished you success. We also